Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Braith. It's Wednesday night, which means it's retro night, and I'm joined by George, Stu, Mitch, Steve H and Steve W tonight as we look at Newcastle versus Fulham over the years. Usual script. The lads give us recollections of games gone by. We then test their knowledge with players that played for both teams, as well as celebrity fans, and also the lads pick their 1 to 11 all-time players between the two teams. So without further ado, it's good evening to Al Walid first in the chat, who is recovering from his operation. I hope you're well, Al Walid. And we will start the show.
All the best.
We'll start the show with you, George. Give us your first recollection.
Yes, the first recollection is a one that is very special because it was the first away game I went to in London, and it was a bit of a reward by the now Brampton Gardens Academy, not the Chicken Road Academy, because we'd moved then and Harry was in charge. But just before this particular game, I had just got into the Northumberland boys squad about a year ahead of my time, and I'd also just signed schoolboy forms for Newcastle. So this was a special treat for us for those things happening. The usual thing happened with us at this time, as I've told you before. Sometimes the club used to give coach companies tickets. If they could fill a coach, they used to give them the tickets, and people used to just buy the ticket with a seat on the coach. Well, of course, as I've said before, me granny used to work for Alfie Hollands in Wallsend, who had a coach company. And she went down and persuaded Alfie to put a bus on for the Fulham game. So that was it, and we're all on our way. And it was a very early morning start. And for me, first time to see all the crates being loaded in the bus early in the morning was something of an eye-opener. Where I had my knapsack with me, bottles of pop and my sandwiches in that my mother had given us. They were all getting ready to have a session on the bus anyway. So this is the fourth round of the FA Cup at Craven Cottage in 55-56, and of course we were going as cup holders, and of course the anticipation in the bus, the fact in the town was that we were going to win it again. I mean, it happened the last time, 2 in a row. Why can't we do it again this time? And it was quite something and quite a journey. The other thing that I remember happening for the first time was when I did get the chance to go into a pub with them, a bar with them. I got my first Pepsi Cola. I'd never seen Pepsi Cola in the Northeast, but I got one in London, so that was something. Anyway, went to the ground, 39,200, which at the time was a record crowd for Craven Cottage. They had never had that many in Craven Cottage. Have you got the programme there? There's the programme for the match going on eBay at the moment for about £6. And there's also one of the two captains tossing up, I think, Steve. That's Alf Michael, our captain, and Jimmy.
That's the coin, George. That's the coin. Before anyone says
it is. That's it. And Jimmy the Chin Hill as Fulham captain. And the name of the referee, Neil, was John Mitchell, would you believe? which happens to be the name of my father, although the family called him Harry, and that's another long story.
I can see a tune look-alike coming here, George, because that actually looks a little bit like Neil.
Well, that's the referee, John Mitchell, who refereed the match. And look at the state of the pitch. It hasn't even kicked off yet. Look at that pitch. It was like a ploughed field. I mean, I think modern day referees would have serious worries about even starting that match. By the time we got to half time, it was a ploughed field. Anyway, that's the next one. There's a team picture as well, Steve, which is the next one I was going to talk about. That one, yes. Well, that's the 11, except in the official programme, it says that the right fullback was Arnold Woolard, who was a Bermudan fullback we had, but actually second along from Bob Stokoe is Ron Batty, Ron Batty was the fullback, and next to him was Bill Patterson, the centre half, were bought from Doncaster for a lot of money, and ahead of his time. Ball playing centre half, which in 55, 56 didn't go down well at St James's Park, and I think he was only half a season, and he's on his way to Glasgow to start his career up there. So that was the game. The game was exciting. It was end to end, but the star man, and I get no apologies for saying it again, was with the one and only Jackie Milburn on the right wing. He tore Fulham to shreds, and within less than half an hour, or just on half an hour, we were 3 up, and Milburn had made all 3 goals and had a free kick saved himself that nearly went in. And it was a cakewalk, and our lot were just getting ready for the next round, sort of thing. But as I say, as the pitch wore on and it became more and more of a ploughed field, it kind of reduced us to Fulham's speed. And just before half time, their left winger Tosh Chamberlain scored a goal, and it was just the wrong time to concede a goal, because they came out after half time with their tails up and with us looking over our shoulders. And it wasn't long before it was 3-2, Tosh Chamberlain again, and then 3-3, Jimmy Hill, 4-3 to them, Tosh Chamberlain's hat-trick, and we seemed to be in a right mess. But then came the equaliser. Now there's a picture there of a goal mouth, of a goal, the net, Steve. That's it. You can see the goalkeeper's in the back of the net, and that's Vic Keeble on the line. The goal, he borrowed a Nat Lofthouse goal trick. The goalkeeper caught the ball from across, and Keeble put his shoulder in and shoulder charged him. And there he is in the back of the net, and that was the equaliser. Now, could you imagine what sort of kerfuffle there'd be if that happened this day? There would be a riot. There would be fisticuffs and all things. But the referee actually let that stand. So that was 4-4. And then, of course, we went on to get the winner, and who should get it but Jackie Milburn. So 5-4. The team that day was Simpson, Batty, McMichael, Stoko, Patterson, Casey, the Irish halfback, Milburn, Reg Davis, the little Welshman, Vic Keeble, Bill Curry, a local centre forward, really, but he was playing it inside left, as we used to call it in those days, and then Bobby Mitchell. But the star man for us was Jackie Milburn. For them, Tosh Chamberlain, of course, was the star man with a hat trick. But playing inside of him was a very young Johnny Haynes, who was to become quite a star in English football, not just for Fulham. The centre forward Bedford Jezard eventually became the manager, and next to him in the forward line was one and only Bobby Robson, and on the right wing, none other than Jimmy the Chin Hill. And they were a respectable team for a second division team. There's no doubt about that. And having been 3-1 down at half time, they made quite a show of it, as we did. I'm not sure if there's any photographs left for the first game. Is this team?
No, that's it, mate. That's
it. Right, good. Okay, and as I say, we left the ground, got into coach to come home, of course. Totally confident that this was it. We were on my way to Wembley again. It had to be. And of course, what did we do next round, 5th round? We lost 2-0 at home to Rotherham, a 3rd division team. To say that knocks the guts out of you, but when you're a Newcastle fan, it's the kind of thing you get used to. But that was a great day and a special day for me. As I say, the first time I went on an away day into London with the gang, and it was something I'll always remember. So 5-4 to us against Fulham, and what a great day it was. But as I say, some of the things I see now in the pitch, there's a very good Pathé News short clip of the game on YouTube and so on. It's worth a look just to look at the pitch, because there's lots of referees nowadays who wouldn't even kick that off. And yet here they would make the whole match on what was like a ploughed field. So that's my first recollections, lads. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure as well, when I do talk-ins with Supermac, I'm pretty sure that was his first game as a schoolboy, at Fulham.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure Supermac was at that game watching.
Wouldn't surprise me. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Stu. Good evening, mate.
Good evening. Well, just the 54 years following on from George's fable there. So,
as usual.
I know, 54 years difference. And George had good memories. This one isn't so good. It's 16th of May 2009. Now, looking back at that season, if you could ever describe a season as cut your own throat through sheer stupidity, this was it. I've got a few things written down. We had 5 managers that season. We had Keegan to start with, then Chris Hughton temporary, Joe Kinnear, Chris Hughton and Calderwood again together, and then Shearer to finish it off. And how are you meant to do well in a season when you've had 5 managers? We also had Dennis Wise as director of football, who was scouting players on YouTube. There was an Argentinian, Nacho Gonzalez, I've got written down, that he signed through YouTube. We also had the Cisco fiasco. That's quite difficult to say. Keegan resigning and then successfully suing the club after the club admitting to lying to the media. And that's at the time when they used to speak to the media. And Shea Given had enough and left in the January transfer window. Michael Owen decided he wanted to do a brochure and not play football to protect his future career, and had to be basically dragged onto the pitch for the last game of the season. But the game itself came. I was living in Tenerife at the time. I'd come over for the last couple of games. The game that preceded it was a Monday night game that I know Mitch and Steve Hasty know very well through their chats with Mr. Lambias, and that was the Middlesbrough game. We won 3-1, and you know the atmosphere there was scarves, there was flags, you know, it was a great atmosphere. And we're going into this game where if we win, we're all but safe. Draw, and we're out the bottom 3, and it's still in our own hands. And if anything could go wrong in a game, or when you just know it's not your day, it was this. I mean, we had a goal disallowed for Duca, and it was a cracking header. And I might be biased, but I still don't understand why it was disallowed. They reckon there was a shove, something to do with Nolan jumping on the line, which he'd done at the previous game, and they were watching it. You know what Steve Taylor used to do all the time? Yeah. And I reckon that he impeded the keeper. What else would I had it written down? There was we had a one cleared off the line just after half time, and then the goal of the game when Danny Murphy always seemed to have a good game against us. He put a defence splitting pass between the centre half and the left back. And the cross went over. He dispossessed Nicky Butt, who I still think was playing for Man United at the time. And then there was I know it's pronounced Kamara, but the joke is it was a camera finish for Fulham. You know, he knocked it in, and then Bassong got himself sent off rather dubiously. Schwarzer was having one of those games that keepers often do against us. You know, it was an inspired performance, making great saves. And the one that he made at the very end from Nicky Butt, for the guy, Schwartzer's got to be, 6'4", I believe. Big lad anyway. And he got down to his bottom post and just got this round the corner when it was just a spin and a shot from Nicky Butt. But even then, that would have kept us out the bottom 3 going into the last game, which we didn't know at the time, but they did stop us equalising. But that day, you couldn't fault the crowd, you couldn't fault the work rates, the effort that got put in, but you could bemoan bad luck and dodgy decisions. So that finished, and we went off to Villa Park for the last game of the season, the infamous game, which you can all say what possibly went wrong. But if you want Mitch and Steve to talk about the Derek Lambias providing the comedy for that game due to the atmosphere from the previous game, then I'll leave it to you. But that was my first game.
Okay, good stuff, Mitch.
The footnote of that was Derek, in his wisdom, decided not to put more scarves out for that game because he thought, quote unquote, everybody will just bring them back. And it was like, for to save a few bob on scarves, just put new scarves out. And that was typical of the kind of decisions they made, wasn't it, Steve?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely spot on. I was going to mention that it was the whole. I mean, when I come, I'll talk about when it comes to my second game. I'll proceed with that.
Right, good one. Well, my first game, carrying on a theme there from Stu, is all about goalkeepers. This is 7th of November 2004, and it's probably the most ridiculous game of football I've ever been to. And I think also the best goalkeeping display I've ever personally witnessed at a game. And the goalkeeper in question is Mark Crossley, who was in goal for Fulham. And that day, we absolutely battered Fulham. The final score was 4-1 to Fulham. That's the other crazy bit about it. The actual game itself could have been 7-4. The amount of chances that we had in the first half in particular. And Crossley produced something that was just unexpected, because I don't know why he was in the team ahead of Van der Sar for Fulham, but he was. I mean, they'd come up to St James's Park, and I don't think they'd had an away win. Or had they not even had a win that season. They were just terrible. But yeah, this day, Crossley decided, well, I'm just going to stop everything. And stop everything he did. I watched a few highlights of the game through the week, and I was writing down, Boyer, Bellamy, Boyer, Bernard, Robbie Elliott, Shearer, Clivert, all within the first 28 minutes, either hit the woodwork or had Crossley stopping a really golden chance. And then on 28 minutes against the run of play, Collins John broke away and put Fulham 1-0 up. And then the rest of the half continued in the same vein, with Crossley stopping everything and catching everything. And the second half was no different. Early in the second half, Robert had one of those free kicks that normally would take the net off. And Crossley managed to keep that out. How he didn't break his wrist doing it, I don't know. It was, again, Clivert again on 65 minutes, hit the foot of the post. And then just straight away from that play, Malbranck goes up the other end and gets Fulham second. And then we just went on one after that. We just threw everything at Fulham and left ourselves wide open at the back. And in the next 10 minutes, they scored twice. Malbranck got a pen, and Luis Buamorte, who was repeatedly linked with us at the time, he was always going to be the next signing, wrapped it up to make it 4-0. We got a consolation from Bellamy just after that, but it was barely a consolation. And I've got to say, that day, Mark Crossley, to use the word inspired, was an absolute understatement. And we all left that ground going, what the hell has just happened there?
Amazing performance. I remember that. And just that's what happens. Some goalkeepers have games like that, and there's nothing you can do.
No.
All right, Steve.
Hiya, guys. Right, well, my first game, it's not my first recollection of playing Fulham, but it's my first choice of a game. I'm going back to November the 17th, 2001. It was a bit of an awkward time for us. I wasn't getting to many away games, and I hadn't, perfectly honest, I don't go to that many away games now. But at that particular time, with a very, very young family, it was getting more and more difficult to get away at weekends. But I had a friend who runs a company down in London, a freight haulage company, freight forwarding, and he said, look, why didn't you come down for the weekend? He says, I'll get with tickets. You can sit, just sit in the Fulham side with us. He says, but it's going to be a special occasion. He says, it's probably going to be the last time that you're going to be at Craven Cottage. He said, we're moving out. He said, the rumour is we're going to QPR. We're going to share ground. They're supposed to be going to do the ground up, but the rumour is we'll never get back in. They thought it was a bit of a con trick by Al Fayed. They thought the ground would eventually be sold because of where it was, make an absolute fortune, and they would end up ground sharing with somebody on that side of London for the rest of their days. So I thought, you know what? It's a ground that I've always liked. It's a really oldie worldy, old fashioned ground, and the walk through the park and everything. So I thought, oh yeah, I'll tell you what, we'll do it. So excuse me, I persuaded my wife that we should go down. The excuse obviously being it's middle of November, it's nearly Christmas shopping time, all that type of thing. It took about a week of convincing, but anyway, off we went. Went down on the Friday, came back on the Sunday, but had a great time. Of course, one of the things I'm not very good at is traveling on my own. I have a tendency to get lost. Well, I hopped on the tube after leaving the family in London. I hopped on the tube. We were in central London, and I just thought, well, it's going to be dead easy. You're just going to follow people. You just follow the crowd. It's Fulham. There's going to be 20,000 there. Follow the crowd, follow Newcastle fans whatsoever. Anyway, I got on probably the only tube that had no Newcastle fans on it. So the only train, overground train. So I just thought, well, I'll just follow this crowd of Fulham fans. They seem like decent lads. So they hopped off the train. I hopped off the train. They walked straight into a pub. Asked somebody where the pub that I was supposed to be going on, and I was told it was the next station down. So that was a great start. I then had to leg it back to the station, back on, find me way. Eventually, I found Roy. Had a couple of drinks. Just so happened this was the area where all the Newcastle fans were anyway, which was good. Walked through the park and then into the game. So let's talk about the game. Enough of the geography lesson. So this was a shocking start. After 20 minutes, we were 1-0 down. After 28 minutes, we were 2-0 down. We weren't playing very well at all. And when I look at the team that were put out, you go to London and you're thinking, with this team, we should be able to absolutely walk this particular Fulham team. We've got Given in goal, we've got Aaron Hughes, and we've got Dabby Zass, we've got O'Brien and Robbie Elliott, which incidentally is still shown on the BBC Premier League the Premier League's website. Pictures of Robbie Elliott, the goalkeeper, not Robbie Elliott, the Robbie Elliott we all know and love, which is ridiculous. Typical Premier League. But then you've got in midfield, you've got a midfield of Robley, Solano, Speed, and Robert, and up front you've got Bellamy and Shearer. Now your expectation is that you're going to walk this. But we didn't. We just didn't. Next thing as I say, we're 2-0 down. Few substitutions made. Gary Speed scored a lovely header after a lovely move. Lovely cross by Aaron Hughes, and a typical Gary Speed header to bring us back to 2-1 on the 65th minute, where he just, if you remember, he could leap like a salmon, hover in the air, and he buried it in the bottom left-hand corner. Great goal. And then Tigana, who was the manager of Fulham at the time, brought Lee Clark on, and within 2 minutes, we're 3-1 down. Absolutely shocking defending again by Newcastle. Ball right across the face of the goal from a corner, 2 yards out, given absolutely nowhere. And Barry Hales just nods it in from literally 2 yards out. A bit like that goal that we saw last Friday for Brentford against Arsenal. It literally was that easy for him to put it in the back of the net. So I'm sitting here saying, we should have won. What I failed to remember when I got there was that we hadn't won in 27 games in London. So for me to sit there and expect us to break our duck at this point after a 27-game run meant I probably was, a little bit 1 over the 8 when it come to the drink and a bit deluded, and maybe I should have just stayed Christmas shopping. But that was the situation. It turned out as obviously that they only stayed at QPR for a couple of seasons. They decided that they weren't gonna leave Craven Cottage at all. They went out, they bought themselves a lawnmower, they cut the grass, tidied the place up, put a lick of paint on it, and all of a sudden it was the best ground in the country again. Everybody was going how fabulous it is to have an oldie worldy ground. But that was the way. I mean, a lot of the reasoning was that obviously the wooden stand and all that, and I think it's only been redeveloped now. I think that the ground is only starting to get redeveloped. What is 20 years later, which when you think of everything that's gone on in football, that's unbelievable. But that was my first game, my first disastrous trip to London, my disastrous trip to London in 2001.
Great stuff. Steve Wilkinson, on to you, mate.
Yeah, well, we haven't got off to a good start tonight. We've got 1 win off George and 3 defeats up the other lads. But I'm afraid I'm going to continue the negativity with another defeat. And another home defeat, quite a heavy one, on 16th of October 1982. And it was the Suamac's first appearance as a manager at St James's Park. And the game started, and when the teams came out, and when Suamac came on the pitch, he got the kind of reception you would think was worthy of a player who had been successful, despite the fact he'd left the club, and it was a standing ovation from everybody. And we hoped then he would sit down and forget about how good he might have been as a manager and let us win the match. However, he had started his Fulham career quite well, because he'd taken over about 1980, I think it was, when Fulham were in the third division at that time. And after 2 seasons, he got them up with a combination of some sort of experienced players. He had Jerry Payton, Tony Gale, Ray Lewington, sort of experienced players, and he'd bring in youthful players. And it was a new signing that he brought in for this game, a 20-year-old lad who we'd never heard of at that time, but over the following sort of 15 years ago was quite a household name, and that's Ray Houghton, who ultimately went on to play for Liverpool and do well for the Republic of Ireland. But Ray Houghton had been brought in from West Ham, I think it was, on a free transfer. He hadn't made it at West Ham, and as a 20-year-old, he was brought in by Suamac at the start of this season. And this game turned out to be the Ray Houghton show, particularly in the first half. And while at that stage we were in the sort of, I suppose, phase 2 of Arthur Cox's rebuild, having signed Kevin Keegan at the start of the season, and we'd already had Terry Mack and Chris Waddle. And this was the season that we hoped with Keegan coming on board that we would do better things. Our team that day: Kevin Carr in goal, John Anderson, Wes Saunders at fullback, Nick Martin, Jeff Clark, Steve Carney in the sort of centre of defence coming forward. Keegan, Kevin Todd, not very well known midfield player. Emery Verardi up front, Terry Mack and David McCreary. So, again, some decent names in that team. But I think we played very narrow. I think it was about a 4-4-2. We seemed to just play with Keegan and Verardi up front, playing very narrow through the middle. And Fulham got off to a great start. And 10 minutes in, the first of the moves involving Ray Houghton, a slick passing movement with from picking up the ball on the halfway line. He ran at us with pace, and he was doing this regularly, and ended up with Gordon Davies banging the ball into the net with a cross shot off the far post. 20 minutes later, 22 minutes gone in the game, Houghton again picking the ball up in the centre circle. He was doing this all the game. Move forward and a precision pass into the path of Dean Coney, slotted it under Kevin Carr as he came out of the goal. So that was 2-0 up to 22 minutes. We had a couple of chances before Fulham next time scored, which was in 37 minutes. This was Houghton himself, and it was a beautiful goal. You can see it. There's almost a full match of the day on YouTube, and this was a great ball picked up by a through ball to Houghton. He ran up. David McCreary approached him, and he left David McCreary on the ground on a spin turn, and he saw Kevin Carr just coming up his line and chipped it over his head into the net. 3-0 down after 37 minutes. Not what we wanted to see. So the crowd was pretty stunned at half time, as you might imagine, and we didn't know where things were going to go, and you hope that the team talk from half time and Arthur Cox would lift us a bit. And I think we did sort of pick up a bit in the second half. Terry Mack went close with a free kick. And then in 63 minutes, Keegan was fouled on the edge of the box, or just inside the box, and got a penalty and slotted it home. So here's the fight back starting. We hope 3-1. And that's how it continued. We started bombarding, and we had a few chances to score, but unfortunately, it was a mistake by Kevin Carr at the back, a breakaway that Dean Coney burst through, hit a fairly tame shot, and Kevin Carr let the ball slip under his arms, and it ended up with Gordon Davies tapping it in for the fourth goal. So that was 4-1, and you're down then and thinking the game's over. But we still rallied again. We had a couple more chances, including another penalty, which this time unfortunately Keegan missed. And so the game ended 4-1, and another defeat when we'd hoped would do a lot better. So that's really my first game. Another disappointing performance against Fulham in a season that we hoped was going to be more successful.
Great stuff, Steve. Big shout out to our sponsor, Spider VPN, and they are the boys to trust with internet security. From our perspective, if you Google Spider VPN, you will find them at the top of your Google search, and they will come up. Give them a shout to protect your computer, your phone numbers, photographs, and everything on your phone. Skipsandbins.com as well, been with us for the last few months. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay as you go waste collection. Also, a big shout out to John from qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. John is in the chat tonight. Hope the recuperation's going well. And a big shout out to John at Jab Signature, whose clothes are now hot off the press. So we should see some promotion from Jab Signature in due course with the new boxing range that is out later this month. And he makes our flyers. Also, a big shout out to L&G Family Funeral Directors. Give them a ring on 0191 389 7245. And Darren Baldwin's Funerals, 304 Old Durham Road, Gateshead. Telephone 0191 478 2730. Email Darren at darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk or visit their website www.darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. First time visitor to the site and the YouTube page, hit the subscribe button, which is the Newcastle Legends logo. Hit the thumb up to like the video channel and click share your like to your social media. If you want to meet like-minded Newcastle fans and have a chat or get a question or comment on the screen, drop into the comments box. But most importantly, hit the thumb up to like the video. We're also available as a podcast, so you can catch up with all the previous retro shows on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and other podcast providers. And we have got a few events coming up, namely this one where you can buy your tickets on Voucher or on Groupon. It's an evening with Steve Howie, Liam O'Brien, Rule Fox, John Beresford, Supermac, Darren Peacock, John Anderson, Kevin Scott. And that is the 4th of September at the Tyne Theatre on Westgate Road. Kicks off for VIPs at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock for the entry-only tickets. Be a cracking night, and there'll be quite a few of the NUFC Matters crew going down there as well. So if you fancy a chance of meeting the legends, get yourself along. The food bank bucket as well is still on the go. NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk is the website address for that. So if you want to make a donation, you can always do that. And you've still got a chance to enter the raffle for the watch, which obviously will be drawn once the pool night is rearranged a little bit later this year. We do have a website as well. If you want to get onto the website, it's nufcmatters.com, and lots of t-shirts on there, and our own NUFC Matters football shirt as well. So get yourself onto the website nufcmatters.com to check out our stuff. Okay, back to you, George, for your second game.
Oops, sorry. Pressed the wrong one, but never mind. Yeah, up to 1960 now, 5th of March 1960. Oh, before I go on with that, there was a question across the bottom that said, has George got a cupboard full of programmes in his house? Well, I hadn't now, but at 7 Brampton Gardens, where my mother lived, there was a cupboard above the hot tank in my bedroom, was stowed off with them. And when I look at the eBay, when I'm checking programs for these programs, and I see what they're selling for, I mean, there was 2 last week for Stoke. One went for 25 quid, and one was up to about 30 before it disappeared. I mean, that cupboard at Brampton Gardens would have been a gold mine now, but however, and that the Fulham program I used today would definitely be in that cupboard, because I bought one and took it to him after the match. So that's an answer to a question I was asked across the bottom. In the picture, Steve, did I give you a picture with 4 guys standing, 3 with strippy shirts? Or
I'll take a look to see what you sent us. But difficult because it's small JPEGs on here for me. You sent us this one.
That one, yes. Well, the reason I wanted to show you that one, that's Fulham. That's Johnny Haynes second from the right, and Ezard, the centre forward, Jimmy Hill, and Tosh Chamberlain, who I mentioned in the match. But the guy in the suit is that the next manager they had called Doug Livingston. And about 6 months after this picture was taken, Doug Livingston became manager of Newcastle United. That's the reason I put that picture on. Anyway, to go to the second match on Saturday, the 5th of March, 1960. It was a match where Charlie Minton now was our manager, and it was a game which was even Steven, 33,993 spectators at St James's Park, and it was interesting for me because in 1960 I was actually involved at St James's Park, and some of the players in our team I actually knew and played with, and one of them was our goalkeeper, a young man called Brian Harvey, who Charlie Minton brought in to replace the famous Ronnie Simpson, because Ronnie Simpson wasn't regarded as big enough. Well, Brian Harvey was about 6'4" and a donus of a man, a really attractive looking guy. But as being a goalkeeper, I think his hands were put on hot because he couldn't control them. I mean, there's every time it went in the air, there was a good chance he would drop it. But the team that day was a good team. Dick Keith, Irish right back, who was a good player. Alf McMichael, and then a funny one, the young man called Minton, John Minton, the manager's son. Now, John Minton, when I played with him in the juniors, was always a left winger, and here he is in right-sided midfield. And then Bob Stokoe, Jackie Bell, who I played with in the ends in the juniors, Gordon Hughes, George Eastham, Len White, Ivor Altchurch, and Bobby Mitchell. And Fulham had quite a decent side. George Cohen, the World Cup fullback to be, much later on was their right back at that time. And then going down to the forwards, right winger was Graham Leggett, a Scottish international they bought from Aberdeen, who I'd seen in Aberdeen many years before, and Cook, a big centre forward, and then playing in an old-fashioned inside left or left midfield. Was quite an oldish player, was Roy Bentley, who used to be our centre forward many years before that, and on the left wing was Johnny Haynes, who by then was the rising star. It was a good game, but it got off to a nervous start for us because it hardly kicked off when Roy Bentley, the old timer returning home, stuck one in the back of the net for Fulham. And then just before half time, Ivor Altchurch, another excellent player, a big man, but very sure-footed and great on the ball, and with a shot like thunder, equalised just before half time. In the second half, we woke up and George Eastham got the second one for us, and then about 10 minutes from the end, Len White scored what was to be the third goal. Now, I think there's a picture of Len White I sent you, Steve. That one. Now, that's not against Fulham, but that's Len White scoring a goal for us. But why I wanted to put that on, that's the strip we were wearing in 1960. And all the teams, from the juniors right up to the first team, were wearing that strip. And it was designed by the manager, Charlie Minton. And believe me, what an uncomfortable strip to wear, especially the socks. You see the black and white straight tops of the socks. They didn't have the weaving techniques to put them all in one like they would now. They were actually added on, and there was a seam just where you turned your sock over, and it was bloody uncomfortable, I tell you. But that was the strip we were wearing at the time, and we would be wearing in this game that I'm talking about. We won 3-1. Bedford Chesard, who I mentioned in the first game as the centre forward, was now the manager and was the manager for a year or two after that. But we had to put it with Charlie Minton for only one more year. Then, of course, he had a miserable season and we had a miserable relegation. But 3-1 Saturday the 5th of March 1960, a good win. Thanks, Steve. I'd forgotten I'd put the programme on. Interested on the programme, if you look at the top, it's got some information about crowds. Maximum capacity, 70,000. A record attendance, 68,000 and some. Well, 68,000 some had been many, many years before when Hughie Gallagher came back to St James's Park with Chelsea. But 70,000, by Jove, I wouldn't like to be in St James's Park with 70,000 in, but I'm sure the directors would have loved it and would like to try. Anyway, that's my second game, 3-1 at home, beat Fulham, and an interesting game it was with all sorts of other things happening. And as I say, with Mitten's son in the team and others that I knew and played with myself. So, as I say, the kick looked great, but God, it was uncomfortable. Thank you. That's my second match.
Great stuff. Okay, over to you, Stu, for your second game.
I'm getting closer. This one's 50 years on from George's second one. But 51 years, I think. I better get out the doom and gloom and put a win in. This is it's 3 seasons, 2 years after the first game I talked about. So it's the start of the season, the third game of the season, August 28th, 2011. We drew 0-0 at home to Arsenal, first game of the season, and it's 6 days after Ryan Taylor put the ball over the wall at the village of the Unwashed. And I think if looking back, I mean, the game itself, the first half, I think it's a word that Mitch uses when he's describing something not good. It can only be described as turgid. And it was, but there was a flurry of chances at the end of the half that woke the crowd up. Now, to be fair, this was a team in transition. It was Pardew's team now. And I've got listed the changes. Kevin Nolan was out, but Kabaye come in. Cisco had left, and we got Demba Ba instead. Barton had been transfer listed at the start of the season and was sold just 2 days before this game. We had Routledge was out, Sylvian Marveau was in. Enrique was out because he didn't think we could ever get in the top 6, which we did at the end of the season. And Santon was in. So more often than not, the squad had improved quite dramatically with some shrewd signings. And it was the best season performance under the Mike Ashley era. So there was a lot of good highlights. Like I said, this first half wasn't one of them. But the second half started, and it was Leon Best's first start of the season. And he did prove to be best that day because he scored both our goals. His first one was Kabaye had a shot from about 25 yards out. And it was one of those where you think it's rather like innocuous, I suppose. But it swerved, and the keeper Schwarzer again. He managed to push the ball onto the bar, and it dropped down. And cool as you want, he just slotted it home. That's it. He just slots it home nice away. So that puts us 1-0 up. A bit later on, the sub Demba Ba comes on, and he gets across, and he was fed by Obertan. He'd signed for us that season as well, I think. Obertan pushed the ball out to the wing where Demba Ba was playing, and he's crossed the ball just into the box, but with the confidence high. The way Best did, he got the ball first, but when he's back to goal, and it was more like, for those who remember, it was like Mark McGee-esque, the way he's back to the goal, and he dragged it and turned it, swiveled, and knocked the ball very coolly, I suppose, into the corner, and it puts us 2 up. And you think, well, that's it. It's a comfortable win now. They've done what you expect. But again, in classic Newcastle fashion, they lay off a little bit. Again, that man, Danny Murphy, then has a little spell. He puts in a great free kick for Clint Dempsey to score against us. And although Fulham had a few more bits of possession, they didn't really threaten to score. We had the best chance, and it was an injury time when Demba hit the bar. I've been waiting all day to say that. Yeah. With a chance. But it didn't go in, so that means I didn't get me 3-1 bet up that day, which is something I'm used to anyway. But after that, 50,000 of us went and hit the bar ourselves and enjoyed the fact that we're unbeaten start of the season. As I said, we actually went 11 games unbeaten at the start of that season and ended up qualifying for Europe. From normally you start the season with a bit of buzz and hope, and this one was just, we'll finish mid-table again. So it was actually an enjoyable season the way it panned out. But like that first half, it didn't give you any expectation of what was to follow. But like you say, the changes were made, and Demba Ba got himself back in fit. I think he scored his first goals in the hat-trick, didn't he, against Blackburn a couple of weeks later. And then his pal from Senegal, Pape Cissé, joined in at the end of January. So that was my second game. I thought I'd put a cheery smile on people's faces after the disastrous run we had before. So that's me, 2 games in. Thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Okay, Mitch, your second game?
My second game, the game itself, it's the return leg of the same season I was talking about before. 4th of May 2005, down at Craven Cottage. It wasn't set up to be the best of games. We'd gone there, we hadn't won away from home since November, and they hadn't won a game in 7. So it was all set up to be a fantastic end-to-end match. But it was a midweek game. I can't for the life of us remember why it had been moved to midweek. Probably something to do with Sky. But and it was near the end of the season. Fulham was safe. They looked like a side who were already booking holidays and getting their flip-flops ready. And we had a little more to play for, pressing on potentially for European places. That particular midweek, one of our lot, who shall be called Albert for this evening, Albert had a very good day. He'd been to Newmarket. Albert arrived in London very late, with a belly full of beer and a pocket full of cash, and plenty to say for himself. We were debating how we're going to get this man into the ground. We were doing all sorts. We were swapping pints for shandies and trying to hide his beer and anything to try and sober him up a bit. And as we're getting closer to Craven Cottage, he's getting more and more wayward as the fresh air's hitting him. So 2 of the lads get him propped up between them. And we're like, right, we're getting near the turnstiles, just keep your gob shut. Well, Albert couldn't keep his gob shut. So we were then invited for a little chat by 3 of the Met's finest. 2 more senior officers and 1 younger, very keen officer with a very, very broad Irish accent. And whilst he's chatting to Albert, we just think we're going to be let to get away when out of Albert's mouth comes, I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat that because I can tell that English isn't your first language. Yeah. Cue stunned silence while everybody's looking at each other like, he's not getting in the game. But thankfully, his 2 senior colleagues obviously thought it was the funniest thing they'd heard all week. One of them was actually with his hands on his knees and his shoulders going, trying to keep his laughing. So thankfully, the 2 older, more senior coppers calmed everything down with this irate young Irish lad, and we were let to go on my way. So we eventually get Albert past the stewards and into the ground. And then the game just made it just in time for kickoff. Bumping into Biffa, who midway through the first half was describing Fulham as all fart and no shite in the fantastic, elegant way that he can. They had plenty of possession, but didn't out with it. We picked up a goal through Ambrose on the 18th minute, knocked down from a corner, and Ambrose rattled it in. During the following limbs that happened in the crowd, however, we then see Albert being escorted out of the ground by a steward. We found out later why, and all he could talk about was making a complaint to the Fulham Football Club because the steward's blood had got on his jeans. But anyway, that's another story again. So the rest of the first half went on. Second half, we went 2-0 up through Clive at about 10 minutes into the second half. Shola got a third, 75 minutes. They rattled in a consolation with about 4 minutes to go. But I was glad to report that Albert did get home safely and no permanent damage was done to his jeans.
That was brilliant, that. Okay, Steve Hasty.
Quick postscript to my choice of game before. I forgot to add that just to rub, the indignity in. Shearer also had missed a penalty in that game. So we could have brought it back to 3-2, but it stayed 3-1. And following on from from Stewie's game, yes, Mitch, you're absolutely right. That was the game or the run of 3 games when Derek Lambias via the then fans liaison officer, Simon Esland, said that, contacted us and said, Derek had an idea, if you remember. He'd been watching the Manchester City in Europe, away in Germany, and he saw a German fan with a megaphone facing the crowd, getting the crowd to sing. And he thought, "What? Wasn't that great? Wouldn't it be good if we did something similar at Newcastle?" I immediately contacted you at the idea of this, and we just said, this was like 7:25 or something on a Friday night, just about to go out and meet the lads in the corner house and head off into town. And it was.
I think I was already in the. You rang me. I was already in the strawberry by that point. I think
it was a case of put the brakes on this. How we cannot have that. And that's when he decided that later on in the week that they would give the freebies out. And he agreed that it would be for 3 games. That was the Fulham game was one. I think the Borough game was another. I can't remember the third game, Portsmouth possibly. Anyway, that was what. But he mucked it up completely. Mike just.
Well, it wasn't just a megaphone. It was clappers. You know, them things that Leicester often have. Right. It was clappers. Well, no, not clappers. Not bloody clappers. Nothing that can be made into a paper plane. Thank you. That's right. Don't give a fan a megaphone because God knows what's going to come out of it once somebody wrestles it out of his hand. It was as mad as Midhat's selection of people from football.
That's right.
It was just.
That's right. Anyway, so getting back to my second game. I've gone for May the 12th, 2019. 2 days before this particular game, I got invited to a training ground with Bill Corcoran and Colin Whittle to meet Rafa Benitez. He'd always said that he wanted to spend a little bit of time talking to the people who were part of NUFC Fans Food Bank. And he wanted to meet us and sit down and have a good chat, but he also wanted to take us around the training ground. He wanted us to show us what it was like, meet some of the players, etc. So we turned up on that Thursday. And what we didn't know is we were going to get, and I think I probably mentioned this on a previous show, we were going to get interrogated on our thoughts on how the training sessions were going, what we thought was going well, who we identified that was putting the effort in training and who wasn't, etc., etc. So after being explained to us how the training sessions were run, we then had to observe the training sessions, the 3 20-minute sessions, and then we went inside and Rafa tested us. He gave us this test, and one of the first questions he asked us was, "Who did you think wasn't trying?" And so there's not like being put on the spot, as fans and getting you a chance to say something about a player. So the 3 of us stood there going, and at which point Rafa went, I'll answer it for you. John Joe Shelby. John Joe wasn't trying. So, John Joe was in a different place today. John Joe's mind was elsewhere. You could tell. And we were just nodding and such like. So anyway, the Saturday comes, Sunday comes. It's the last game of the season. A game, by the way, we're talking about fans there earlier. A game that it'll be remembered for the scoreline. It'll be remembered for the fact that Fulham got relegated. It'll be remembered for the fact that it was Rafa's last game. But be also remembered within the history, I suppose, of Newcastle fans and the way that Newcastle fans can do something really unusual when they want to. And that was the booze cruise, or the cruise down the river that Darren Burry arranged, where 13 or 1,400 fans went to the game with flags aplenty on an armada from central London all the way down to Fulham. And so when people got to the ground, the atmosphere was absolutely fantastic. But that was because a fan took it upon himself to do something for other fans, and everybody who wanted got behind it. I think it was more difficult to get a ticket for the boats than it was to get a ticket for the match, if the truth be known. Anyway, onto the game. We were convinced. We told all our pals, like, that's it. Shelby's played his last game for Newcastle. The team was announced, and Shelby wasn't just playing; he was named captain. Now that says an awful lot for the man management of Rafa Benitez. And what happened on the 9th minute? Shelby scored. Not only did he score, he scored his first goal of the season. For God's sake, You know, in the last game of the season, he's captain. He's played rubbish for God knows how long. We've just watched him in training being absolutely crap. And he goes, gets the captaincy, wears the armband and scores a goal. 2 minutes later, Perez scores. So 2-0 up after 11. I mean, the game's over by that point. Shaw slotted one in on the 61st, and then the man who was man of the match, the entire, completely, absolutely dominated, played a number 9's role like we've never seen since, and that was Rondon, and he scored on the 90th minute to round out what was a fantastic 4-0 win. Now, I look at the team, just to give you an idea. In goal, Dubravka, a back five of Hayden, Shaw, Lascelles, Dummett and Ritchie. That back five could have been selected on Sunday, by the way, and but for injuries. Then you had the midfield central two of Shelvey and Diarmi, with the wide men of Atsu and Perez, and up front, Rondon. On the bench, we had, we had Clark, he played on Sunday. We had Muto, he's just gone. Kennedy, he went that season. Fernandez, he played. Darlow, would have been on the bench or possibly have played but for illness. And then two youngsters in Cass and Watts. And Watts obviously played in pre-season but has now gone on loan. But it just goes to show like how little has changed within Newcastle. And I keep harping on about this because I've mentioned it a few times. The quality of the squad, the lack of changes within the squad, etc., etc. But that's my second game, a 4-0 win. Fulham were already relegated, and unfortunately, Rafa's last game for Newcastle, although we didn't know it at the time, although I think, if the truth be known, many of us suspected, and certainly when we walked out on that Thursday from the training ground, we knew in our own mind that was Rafa's swan song.
Okay, Steve Wilkinson, finish off with your second game, please.
Right. Well, I'm going to spoil the winning run of the second half, although we managed to get a draw in this game, and it was my one and only time going to Fulham, and it was the second game of the season that I talked about earlier on, 82-83, game on the 26th of February. Went down to London, a few of my mates with me, and thought, well, Fulham's an unusual ground. It's not like you see it on the television and you see the sort of different style of it. Now, I was almost keen to see the ground and understand it. And we actually went in the seats. And I don't know whether Newcastle were in that seats, but we went in the seats and we're right up against a fence, sitting next to the barrier between the fans and sitting next to a Fulham fan. And I remember asking him, how did you get to support Fulham? Because I thought there's loads of other London teams more fashionable than Fulham. How do you become a Fulham fan? And his answer was that he only went to Fulham because he lived local and it was the only place he could get a beer after 3 o'clock, because obviously all the pubs shut at that time. So there was no particular reason that he supported Fulham other than it being a chance to sit in the seats and have a drink at that time. So, I didn't really get the answer I was expecting on that. So back to the game itself. I think I was sitting in the stand on the picture that George showed earlier on. You sort of saw the stand in the background. That was the sort of typical old stand that they probably still got at Fulham, like the one at Newcastle used to be on the Milburn stand now. Small seats, and so we settled down with the game, and we got off to a great start, scoring in the first minute. Imre Ferrari put the ball in the net in the first minute, and so you're thinking things are good. The pitch again, as was in the George Cup match earlier on, was a bit of a quagmire. They hadn't done much to the pitch, and the pitch was a bit of a mess. So that did affect the game in a certain way as the ball was bumping around everything. Half an hour in, Fulham equalised, ball into the box, and Gordon Davies, who had scored in the game twice at the game at St James's, Kevin Carr again advancing off his goal, and a ball coming in, and it was nowhere near it, and Gordon Davies headed it over his head. But before half time, we were back in front, and this time it was a Terry McDermott goal, longish ball coming into the box. I think it was Kerry Wharton who was playing in this game, put the ball in the box, and Terry McDermott steamed in and it hit in up from about the edge of from about the penalty spot, giving us the lead at half time. The state of the pitch was such that in the goal areas the markings had started to disappear, and so they actually came out at half time. We remember this, and they marked the penalty spot. But for some reason, he only did it in the end that Fulham were going to attack in the second half. They probably weren't bothered if we got a penalty. And it turned out, I don't know how it had been arranged, but that Fulham actually got a penalty. 65th minute, there was a foul, and I think it was Jeff Clark pulled the guy back going into the box from an arm. It was pretty blatant penalty. And Kevin Locke stepped up and banged the ball in the net. And that was the way the game finished, 2s each. We had started to pick up a bit from the form earlier in the season where the team had settled down. By this time, Waddle was back in the team. Kenny Wharton was more of a regular youngster playing, and Neil MacDonald was in the midfield. So the team was starting to get a bit more shape. As the season went on, we actually finished 5th that season, but Fulham finished ahead of us in 4th. But it was the times before playoffs and everything, then the top 3 that year, QPR, Wolves and Leicester, went up, and we stayed in the second division. But the following season, once the introduction of Peter Beardsley came in, was the season that we've talked about many times, and memorable season when we did go up. So that was my second game, Fulham 2, Newcastle 2 in February 1983.
Nice message from George Green there. Looking at the programme of my first Newcastle game in 1966, the great Johnny Haynes was playing George Cohen and a young wing half called Bobby Robson. I can still feel the atmosphere to this day. Thanks for sharing that with us, George. Time to pick out the players who played for both Newcastle and Fulham and see whether the lads can guess them. Should be fairly straightforward. The players, I think, today. First of all, this guy. Obviously,
Mohammed Al Fayed. Sorry, Kevin Keegan.
Kevin Keegan, of course, managed both Newcastle and Fulham.
Peter Beardsley.
Pedro.
Peter Beardsley.
Lee Clark.
Clarky.
Lee Clark had a great time down at Fulham. Certainly enjoyed himself down there.
Mitro. Not on fire.
Alexandra Mitrovic.
Andy Cole. Damien Duff. Wayne Routledge.
Yeah, Routledge, yeah.
Oof.
One for George, I guess. No.
If he turns his microphone on.
Is it Bentley?
There you are, George. I had to mute you, George. You were having your guest. Your guest was taking over the show again when people were trying to speak. So
right. Okay. It looks like Roy Bentley to me.
That's the man. Well done. Silent but deadly there, George.
Yeah.
Alan Gomez.
Gomez.
Supermac.
Last.
Parker.
Oh no, I've got one more.
Scott Gowan Circles Parker.
Louis Saha.
Louis Saha, clean sweep for the lads on that one. Okay, and we have the celebrity fans. Now this one was great. We'll start off with an easy one.
Hugh Grant
and his infamous mugshot. I do love that photograph. Okay.
Margot Robbie.
No. Now, if you get this one, the rest should follow, I think. But see whether you can get this one.
I recognise her. Goldie. Actress.
On the right track. You're barking up the right tree, Steve.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, me.
I did a bit of research and I found someone who I remember in our olden days, and her olden days, more relative to my time, but on a Blackman, but I don't think that's her, is it?
No, it's not.
No, I didn't think it was.
Has a look of Susan George about her, but I don't think it is.
She has got a very look of Susan George, but it's not Susan George.
Not very happy anyway.
She's not.
Well, she's a Fulham fan. I wouldn't expect her to be, really.
Okay, guys, I think giving you enough time. That is Sharon Juice, the actress who was in Big Deal. You remember Big Deal back in the 80s? Okay, which is probably going to make this one a bit difficult.
Oh.
Is it a lad or a girl?
Lad. Should know it.
You're on mute,
Any
Steve.
clues?
I'll be surprised. Yeah, it's because Bolas has just walked in and she's rattling bags and moving things around. So I was trying not to create. She's just saying she's now making a guest appearance on the show.
No, I didn't.
We're all getting invaded. First George, now me. Okay, well that is Dominic God.
Right.
He is Sharon Juice's partner.
Partner. Yeah.
Okay, so next up, 2 to me. We're looking for the man here, not the woman.
Oh, I was going to say she's in Emmerdale.
Nah, you got us on that one again, mate.
Right, that is
Somebody else, God.
Christopher God.
Yeah.
That is Dominic's brother.
Oh, God.
All right, so that's a hat trick from me. All right, this one.
Mrs. God.
Yeah, Isabella God.
Security guard.
My God.
Right, God.
I love this. I really did love this. Like, this is
Of
honestly,
God.
I stumbled across this. It's absolutely hilarious. Okay, this is. She played Nurse Duffy in Casualty. This is Kathy Shipton.
Oh.
My
She's
God.
married to Christopher God.
Christopher God. Yeah.
Right.
It's a family of Fulham fans. It's a
They don't all live in that Craven cottage in the corner of the ground with it.
absolutely brilliant. All right, last one.
We should have been on God for that one.
Very well done, George. Well done. Okay, this one.
Talking of gods, he's one in Porridge, isn't he?
No, don't
No,
tell us
he
I'm going
looks
to get
like it.
this as well.
He looks like the god from Porridge. What was it? The Mackay.
Yeah.
No, it's
It
not
looks
Fulham.
like him, but it's not him.
Not a very old Ray Brooks, is it?
No. Wow. I've got
Now
you
you clean-
on. I've got you
cleaned
on
out.
all but, I've got you on all but Hugh Grant. That
Steve, I think we should give you a guard of honor for this today. Like.
Spenny Mag got the advert, but he didn't get the name. It's Michael Redfern, who was the dad in the Oxo adverts.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great stuff. A lot of fun doing that. And it was good to find a family of Fulham fans all related.
I remember bumping into Ian McShane, the actor, outside Fulham's ground when we went once. That was the only famous place I think they had, you know.
Brilliant. Great stuff. All right. Let's go with teams. Steve Wilkinson, I'll give you first shout this week.
Right. I think it's quite a decent team, this.
I think it will be.
Good players that we could have picked and have left out. Dave Besson in goal. Alan Nielsen, Philippe Albert, Alan Goma, Aaron Hughes at the back. Midfield, Paul Bracewell, Lee Clark, Scott Parker. Up front, Andy Cole, Supermac and Peter Beardsley with Bobby Robson manager.
Great stuff. It's always good because you can always find different players and it shows you're doing your research as well. So Steve Hasty, your team?
Exactly the same team, except I had Beardsley wide on the right with the front two of MacDonald and Andy Cole. Can you imagine what Beardsley would have been like feeding those two?
Oh,
dear
fantastic.
me, it would have been remarkable. I went for Keegan as the manager, and I stuck Sir Bobby Robson as our sporting director.
That's what I did.
Great stuff. Mitch?
Believe it or not, I come up with exactly, after I tinkered with this team 3 or 4 times this week, and the team I settled on is exactly the same as Steve Wilkinson's. With Besson, Hughes, Goma, Albert, Nielsen, Clark, Bracewell, Parker, Beardsley, who I would have playing at the tip of a diamond, behind Supermac and Andy Cole, and Sir Bobby as manager.
The through balls would be fantastic. Through to Cole.
Would be crazy, wouldn't it? Would be crazy.
Bracewell, Peter Beardsley. Fantastic.
All right, Stu, over to you.
Not too dissimilar. Besson in goal, back 3 of Albert, Goma and Aaron Hughes. Midfield 4 of Bracewell, Parker, Lee Clark and Damien Duff on the left. with I mentioned on Twitter about probably the best 3 forwards we've been able to pick in one team, and it's Beardsley, Supermac, and Andy Cole. Imagine that playing together now. It's incredible, isn't it?
Amazing. Okay, last but by no means least, George, with your team.
Besant, of course. Aaron Hughes at right back. Damien Duff on the left side of defence. Paul Bracewell. Philip Albert. Danny Guthrie, because I always liked Danny when he was with us. 7 was Peter Beardsley. 8 was Lee Clark. 9, for old time's sake, Andy Cole. And 10, Malcolm MacDonald. And 11 was Louis Sahar. And manager Bobby Robson, again, for old time's sake.
Great stuff, as always, lads. Fantastic to hear your selections. And week off next week, so it gives you plenty of time to plan for the next show. And we'll be doing our fan series next week. So enjoy your week off. I'll see you the week after next. Take care, lads.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, everyone.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again.